Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, in a recent video I was answering some questions and I was talking about using a pocket knife and about how to cut with a slip joint. And I had quite a few people ask me about it and to go a little more in depth about how what I'm talking about when I'm talking about carving with a slip joint pocket knife. And several said, look, I've got a small child or my young daughter, my young son, whatever, and I'm wanting to teach them how to do knife skills. What's a good way to go about it? So today we're going to talk about how you can practice your knife skills and how you can bring a young person in to practice their knife skills. Now what we're going to be talking about is like a Swiss Army knife or like a slip joint. Small lockbacks will work as well. One of the considerations when you're looking at a knife is what the blade is going to be used for. Many of the lockbacks today are tactical and they're meant to be a lockback. They're a sticky, type weapon. They're not really that good for carving. And so you can utilize the pocket knife. You can also use a just small fixed blade knife like a carving knife, commonly called a whittling jack, and places like Smoky Mountain Knife Works has that type, which is a nice handle with a fixed small blade for practicing. Now that might be something you want to go with. But bringing a young one in to teach some knife skills, and I really encourage everyone to teach both their sons and their daughters to have a basic knowledge of a knife skill. And there's a very simple reason. In real world, whether you're going to be a woodsman or not, you're going to use knives in your daily life, especially if you're in a kitchen cutting up vegetables, cutting up chicken, whatever. And so therefore it makes sense, doesn't it, to have at least a good basis of safety and how to utilize a knife for in the kitchen, if nothing else. And when you go look at a lot of the culinary schools, these are big money. People are paying real money for you to teach them how to be a 5-star chef. And almost invariably, when you look at the curriculum, there's this big block of knife work where they're teaching you how to use a knife quickly, efficiently, and safely in a very congested, high-speed kitchen where somebody turning around with the wrong knife is going to end up hurting. And beyond the person getting hurt, you're now losing productivity and you've got a lawsuit probably and that. So they're big on knife skills. And of course, when you look at like certain chefs, like the Japanese type chefs who are doing sushi and that type thing, very precision work, a big block of their training is knife work, how to sharpen a knife, how to use a knife, how to maintain knives, etc. So knives are not just a woodscraft tool. It's something that you really need a really good basis of. We've been plagued by the cheapness and availability of knives. When I was young, I can remember in the drawer in the kitchen, there was a couple of old hickory or case butcher knives that were not to be touched by us kids because those were being used for cutting up chickens, cutting up game, whatever, processing meat, a boning knife, several other pieces. And then up here by the sink and the strainer was the common knives. And quite often those common knives were very cheap knives. And they were the ones that you grab whenever you wanted to cut up an apple or you wanted to slice up some cucumber into a little vinegar and salt for like a quick cucumber salad or something like that, cutting up a peach, cutting up a plum, because there was always that bowl of fruit sitting there on the table and you just grab whatever you want and process it. Well, that was the quick grab knife for that, and it was usually something small. Now a lot of the older guys like my grandfather and stuff like that, they had a pocket knife for that. And I can remember many times of watching them pick up an apple and pull out one of those, that Granddaddy Barlow whatever pocket knife or that 3-blade stockman and sit there and eat apples, processed apples, whatever. And then rinse it off, put it back in the pocket. They were constantly in use, constantly being worked with. And because of that, they were a day-to-day tool. And so that's a great way to start out. What I suggest you do, especially with the little one, is get some little knife. Now, my very first pocket knife, as I mentioned several times in videos, my grandfather gave me a little Barlow. And the first thing he did was he took it, and it was a cheap Barlow, was put it into a vise and took the tip off of it so it was actually blunt on the end. That meant I could slice, but I could not stab myself with it. And in his mindset, I was a greater risk to stab than I was to cut. Cut could be sewed up, stab might be something bad. So, get a small knife of some kind that seems to fit your child's hand or yourself or whatever, and start making salads. Go get a cucumber, carrots, things like that, and practice slicing. You know how to slice, right? Just pull straight across. After you've got good at slicing it that way, then what you need to do is you need to try to cut it in long cuts and make it into 8 pieces, 8 long pieces, and then come back and diagonally cut that. Pretty soon you'll get the hang of it, and especially with little ones, it's something that if they don't do it exactly right, you ain't out nothing, you can still eat it, right? So cutting up zucchini, cutting up squash, cutting up peaches, cut up apples, cut up things like that. Just get some of them and say, hey, we're going to do, how about we cut it up? You help me cut it up, okay? And you practice the basic cuts. Tell them, I want you to try to cut it just like this and show them how you want them to hold the knife like this and slice one piece at a time off that cucumber, about this thick, see? That gives them positive reinforcement. They see they're doing a good job. They'll also know when they make an uh-oh. Now, you want to make sure, I prefer to put it on a wooden cutting board and have them slice straight down, keeping their hand well away from that cutting edge, and you're going to be right there watching them, okay? If that hand starts to drift toward the cutting edge, say something. Whoa, whoa, hold it. Move your hand back. And sit there and do draw cuts like this to process that item. So by giving them like a cucumber and put it up there and have them do this action and pull back toward them and slice it thinly. Challenge them. How thin can you do it? Can you make it thin enough I can see through it? Get them to start putting a little technique to it and trying. Okay, it'll be fun. It's a game. You're spending time with them, and they learn from this. Now, once we get to where they can cut and slice up things like that with fair confidence, then move on to maybe a carving task, because they've kind of got a little bit of muscle memory. And this is true of you as well as a child. We utilize what's called muscle memory when we're utilizing tools in our hand. And muscle memory is based upon a repetitive motion that's kind of got a program that's now running in our head. You do not have to think, breathe. You automatically breathe, right? When you walk, you don't stop breathing, you keep breathing. Well, it's an automated system. Repeat this function, right? Well, whenever I'm going to pick up something to carve, if I have done it repetitively, I have trained the muscles to know the pattern and the order of operation. And it becomes something that you don't have to think about. Your body just does it. So when I pick this up, for let's say, and I'm going to just push away, I automatically know how to feel it, get it to engage, bear down, push away from me. And get the slice. I want to go full length of the blade from base to tip as I push. See? When you're training little ones, say the same thing. Get up there, but instead of actually cutting it, tell them what you do this. I want you to put it up there, and I want you to push and slide it all the way in. Slide it all the way to the tip. And then have them slice a carrot or something like that. Long strokes away from me. There are going to be actions when you're going to have to cut back toward you, but we don't want to start with those because they require muscle memory to keep from cutting yourself. So we want to train the body going away from ourselves as much as possible. Now, with the Cub Scouts, when I worked with them for a little bit, a way that we trained with that first Swiss Army knife that all of them got, the Cub Scout knife, was we'd go by the dollar store and we'd buy a bunch of those bars of soap, kind of like Dove soap, you know, just plain white bath soap. You know what I mean? They come in a big bag, block of them. And we would tell them that we're going to carve a donkey or a horse or a dog or whatever. And you'd take that block and you'd roughly trace out the shape on it so they could see it from the side, the shape of a dog. And you cut the stuff away from the back, and you cut the stuff away from front of the leg, and you cut the stuff between the legs, and you cut this way for the tail, so that sideways it looks like a dog. Okay, it's this way it's still a block, but that way it looks like a dog. And we would put a mat or something around right here for them to cut on. Well, as they're cutting, those chips of soap would fall down in there, and we would save those chips. Those soap chips would be added to a little bit of warm water until they softened up and kind of liquefied, and we kind of stir it up real good and make soft soap. And that went in the bathroom to be able to wash your hands with, a little pump. We'd make soft soap out of that to utilize that way. But it also made the allow the child to practice carving. Now he starts to see a little in 3D, okay? Because now you get to see it sideways. That looks like a donkey or a mule or whatever it is you're trying to carve. You turn the edge on like that, it just looks like a block of whatever. Well, now, how about we make the face a little narrower as their ability gets better? How about we make the face a little narrower? Can we split between the two legs and make it 2 legs instead of 1 block? Those type of things. And if it screws up and breaks, it's a bar of soap. No big deal. The knife does not have to be hugely sharp to carve soap, less likely of damage to the child. Okay. Now, those are the basic ideas for how to get someone completely green and doesn't know a basis to start. Is have some sort of repetitive, useful action they can do with the knife, because this is one of those things you can't book learn knife. You got to do it. You got to put in the dirt time, and you got to put in the time to do it. Now you have a distinct advantage. The Boy Scouts of America in the last century have done a lot with kids with pocket knives. And so if you do some searches, I'm betting online, you're going to find booklets, pamphlets, stuff like that, teaching how to carve simple shapes for Cub Scouts, how to, do knife skills and things like that with a knife, and go with that. Now, for those of you that have never been associated with Boy Scouts, there was a card that they got when they demonstrated safe knife usage, and if they violated that in something later on, like in a setting, the Scoutmaster would call them on it and would cut a corner off of the their little card, and if they lost all 4 corners, they'd lost the knife. They had to start over. It encouraged the kids to be more safe with their knife, especially in this type of setting. Now, for us, let me move the camera around here, and we're going to look more about what I suggest for adults who already have a basic idea. You are okay in a kitchen carving up vegetables and things like that. You can handle that part. Then you want to go talk about a tri-stick. Now, let me set the camera up and I'll show you that. Now, This is a jackknife like I just showed in a recent video. But you could also use a Swiss Army knife, just as useful. But I recommend some sort of blade that has a more rounded end of it instead of a really sharp pointed blade. Like I said in a lot of the tactical lock folders and things, that pointy knife is only good for certain things, but this round type is used in a lot more of the bushcraft, woodscraft world. Now get you a green stick, something not important. Don't cut your wife's bushes or something like that, but get you a green stick. Now look up online and you will see what a T-R-Y stick, Morris Kochanski's tri-stick, and it was a series of different types of cuts and notches that you would learn to do with a pocket knife. So for example, let's say a pot hook, okay? A pot hook, I'm going to do an X. You see how I'm bearing down and I'm twisting the stock really and holding the knife still. And I'm going to come the other way and I'm going to twist. I'm going to form an X, okay? This top tooth I want. All these others I want gone. So that gives me the two slots. And now I'm going to put it up there, and notice I'm going to hold it, hammer fist in my hand, put my thumb against the back of the blade. I'm going to use my other thumb to push away from me. And I'm going to undercut under that point, keeping that point intact. Okay, just like this. See how I'm rotating the stock with my hand, this hand, and keeping the knife in a relatively the same position. And when I get a few things burred up like that, bear down and rock and cut them off. Bear down and rock, cut them off. And you just start cutting in. What we're going to do is we're going to undercut this notch a bit at a time until we've got a point coming out and it's underneath it. Now that I've got it kind of established right there, I'm going to start doing this. Okay, now you can see I've got a notch carved into it, and that's where a bail would lock in right there. So it'd come in this way, go around, go out that side, but that's where the notch would hook. And all I gotta do is open this up depending on how big I need it to be. Okay, undercut it just a little bit so that that pot hanger will hang right there. That's a super simple little task. An X, you take away everything except that point, so that that is where the pot bail would go into, like that, to hold it. Now there are many different types of notches, but Morris Kochanski showed you the vast majority of the most useful ones. The reduction, the square notch, the 7 notch, And right quick, I'm going to do a 7 notch right here. All we got to do for that is you're going to start and cut in, and then you're going to slice up to that line. Just like this. So push in and cut off till it becomes a stop. And then once you do, cut down. When I was a boy, this was just a common thing for us kids to do, to take our pocket knives and practice whittling. Now, in bushcraft, you're going to find you making things. You're going to be making tent stakes. You're going to be making dingle sticks, little pot hangers and things to go onto the camp and things like that. And when that happens, you're going to be making them like this, because we're bushcrafters, woodscrafters. We take what we got and we make what we need. Okay, there is, for all practical purposes, a 7 notch, just like that. This is where a cord or line, like I would be going to put for a tent stake or something like that, would come in and anchor on the top of a tent stake or something like that. But see how I'm cutting away from me? And that's the big thing. When you're practicing with these pocket knives, cut away from you. Don't do this, because it could. Now, in talking about that, got to have a strong spring. If you can just flop it closed, flop it open, it's too loose. It should be a kind of a fight. It's something you got to kind of to do it. And like I said, grab, pull out, grab a hold, and then pull this away. That way if you slip, it's just going to slop back in. You're not going to lose it in your hand. But you want it to be a fairly strong spring doing these type of jobs. Now to close it, put it around your hand, do like that, and I always grab the blade and ease it closed. I don't want it to go bang and close it. Swiss Army knife. Most people are familiar with this. Mine is about worn out from so many years. So it does have a little bit of walk and talk, but not as much. You can tell the blade's been straightened out from so much use. The Swiss Army knife is a very good knife for this job, because it's kind of set up for it. That nice broad handle. My model is the Fieldmaster, and it's the one I prefer over it, the other models, because of the features that it have. One, it fills my hand very well. Sits there. Now I've got a lanyard on mine, but my lanyard is removable. There's a little lanyard ring on them, and this is just simply a loop where I've taken the guts out of paracord and created, passed it back through itself like that. So that's my belt loop to keep it in my pocket. I drop this in my pocket, bring this up over my belt, and let that fob hang down, and I can always just grab and pull it right off my pocket. But it's got the can opener, Swiss Army knife, the can opener, Phillips head screwdriver, bottle opener, a pair of scissors right here, the saw blade, the small blade, and then you've got a sewing awl, a package hook, which is great. Package hook, a lot of people don't realize. That hook is great for hooking bank line or something and pulling it. And then it's got the Phillips head screwdriver. My model, which was limited, right here in this very corner there's a tiny hole, and there is a straight pin, like sewing pin right there. Fantastic for getting little splinters out of you. Then there's a pen, writing pen right there. There is a toothpick, which I removed by my good friend Chris. Gave me a little ferrule rod that goes right in there. That's one of them teeny tiny little ferrule rods, and glow in the dark tip. And then on the other side you got tweezers. Okay, so if you're looking for a model to have for a Swiss Army knife for this, I recommend the Fieldmaster. That's just my 2 cents worth. The slip joint jack knives are great. They really are. But for an everyday carry, I prefer this. And for you starting out whittling, it may be a little easier because the handle's a little easier to grab a hold of. Okay? But the Morris Kochanski tri-stick is what you want to practice with. If you're already confident in your ability to cut up vegetables and stuff like that in the kitchen, and nothing stops you from using this in the kitchen, right? Take it, use it. If you feel confident, then move on to something. Try a different model. Now the big jackknife here, as you can see, is a much bigger knife, heavier and thicker blade, but the rounded profile, mine's been sharpened so much, gives it a much better ability for carving notches and things like that. So, practice with it. And you remember how I told you about you peeling carrots? Well, that's peeling bark. Slicing carrots, that's the same thing as we're doing here, slicing rounds out of a piece of wood. Learn to control it. See how thin a strip you can roll up of that bark. See? That's how you learn. Now see how my thumb is pushing? Scoop my hand up and just push. My hand, this hand is just holding the blade still, and it's this hand that's actually telling the blade where we want it to go, how deep we want it to run, etc. Just like that, pushing through. It's all about control. Never get in a hurry. As you develop hand-eye coordination, the knife will become more and more at home to you, and you will therefore get greater confidence with it and greater abilities with it just by how you utilize it. Okay, that's all you got to do. Hook it. Just maintain that angle and go straight. Now, scraping. You're going to do this in making tenders and stuff like that, is put it and pull the blade square to you. See, it's kind of a straight, but I'm also kind of drifting down. Watch my hand. Oops. See, I'm drifting away just a little bit. That helps keep that edge rolling it down the line so it doesn't go to chattering. You can practice that on a carrot. Make shredded carrot. Thank you for watching today, guys. This is sort of one of those awkward ones. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's just, for me to teach you hand-eye coordination, that's very difficult. That's something, like I said, you got to have the dirt time. You've got to do it. But what are you going to practice with? Well, there's vegetables. Plenty of vegetables. Peel carrots, peel cucumbers, cut up apples, whatever. When you want to try to start carving, go get some blocks of soap. They're cheap. I remember going to the Dollar Tree and they'd have those 4 block bars of those soaps for $1. So I'd get like 4 of them, you know, and have plenty of carving to show little ones. And we'd sit and practice carving and making shapes and stuff like that. And when it breaks, and it will, you're still not out nothing. It's still a pile of soap, right? You're still going to get to utilize it. Practice the skills. When you feel confident, go get Morris Kochanski's and start doing tri-sticks, because that will teach you every one of the primary notches and cuts that we use in bushcraft, of reduction, of making a hole, of making a pot hook, of making a 7-notch, etc. Those are the ones. Morris has done the hard part. We'll call it the graduation exercise. When you can sit down with a good green piece of wood and a good sharp knife and do an entire tri-stick in like 1 hour, you've got real skills, because you won't have any wasted effort. Your hand knows how to cut and do at speed, and you have muscle memory in those hands. Hope you enjoyed this, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Until next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.